Hello, we are no longer defending a human network. We are defending a machine ecosystem, and it is time our security playbook caught up. While organizations spend millions of dollars and massive effort fortifying security around their human workforce, a far greater threat has emerged in the shadows. That means modern automated cloud architectures have created a massive side door where hundreds of non-human machine identities exist for every single human user. So because the modern perimeter is driven by this unmonitored machine speed workforce rather than human error, the traditional security playbooks are outdated, simply. So security teams must shift the focus from defending human networks to protecting this invisible majority. To deconstruct this automated workforce, we have to look past the surface level definitions and expose exactly what these entities are doing inside the network right now. Humans are the conscious users of the network. Non-human identities are the nervous system. They are automated, they are invisible, and they are hyper-connected pathways that actually move the data. So first we look at the autonomous connectors. These are the API keys and the tokens. They are plain text digital tissue linking your multi-cloud applications. And of course, they have no multi-factor authentication and they rarely expire. If an attacker copies a string of text, they instantly inherit total access, completely bypassing the identity provider. Second, we look at the privileged infrastructure, the service accounts. These are the overprivileged ghosts in the machine. They perform background system checks deep within the operating systems and cloud clusters. And of course, because we don't want to break production, we don't rotate service account passwords. So these credentials routinely sit static and unchanged for years. Third, we have the enterprise master keys. These are secrets and certificates. This is our cryptographic bedrock, database connection strings, SSH keys, and certificates that authorize machine-to-machine communication. So when your developers are rushing to meet deployment deadlines, these keys are routinely exposed in flat files, deployment pipelines, and collaboration channels. Which does bring us to a new frontier, the new execution class, AI agents. These are autonomous decision makers granted live, high-privileged enterprise credentials to read data, access systems, and of course, execute multi-step tools on behalf of your users. So attackers are no longer the human endpoint. They're no longer trying to exploit the human endpoint as their final objective. The human endpoint is just the beachhead. The moment a threat actor gets inside, they immediately hunt for these keys. They look for the service accounts, look for tokens, because they know that once they capture the machine identity, they gain permanent, silent, unrestricted lateral movement across the entire enterprise cloud fabric. When we talk about the scaling crisis, we have to look beneath the hood and expose the specific operational behaviors driving this math. Why do these machine connections outnumber us nearly 150 to 1? It is driven by three distinct operational realities. First, look at the multi-cloud data fabric. These act as our automated continuous data couriers, syncing assets across hybrid cloud environments 24/7, 365 days with zero human intervention. Second is a DevOps CI/CD engine. In modern engineering, software is updated hundreds of times a day via automated deployment assembly lines. Every single step of that automated line spawns a unique set of machine keys per developer commit. A single engineer can generate a dozen machine perimeters in 5 minutes just to move code to production. And of course, third is unmanaged SaaS integration sprawl. This is a persistent bi-directional web of pipelines created instantly via single-click user consents. When a manager clicks allow integration to link to platforms, they're issuing an unmonitored permanent digital passport straight into the architecture. And so we build this asymmetry on purpose. It happened to us as the architectural tax for corporate agility. But the challenge now isn't to stop the automation. It is to accept that this machine workforce is running the company, and we currently have zero line of sight into their credentials. The anatomy of risk. This is why we are vulnerable. The true risk profile of non-human identity is forged by three pillars: absolute lack of visibility, unmanaged sprawl, and chronic privilege escalation. But what fuels the risk? What allows it to burn out of control? It is the fact that our traditional security tools are still fundamentally obsessed with monitoring human anomalies and chasing known signatures. They are scanning for things humans do. But what happens when you bring in the machines? The old playbook collapses. Threat actors are using compromised machine identities to carry out programmatic credential manipulation. And of course, it is happening entirely outside your standard behavior baselines. To a legacy tool, a rogue script altering an API configuration looks identical to normal background noise. So really, why are we still spending millions of dollars looking for known anomalies and static signatures? Signature detection is essentially dead. If you're waiting for a known signature to trigger an alert on an enterprise machine identity, you have already lost. It is time to entirely abandon human scale detection and pivot towards measuring machine behavior and operational tempo. We have to baseline the speed, volume, and context of machine-to-machine communication, because that is the only boundary an adversary cannot fake. On the previous slide, we looked at the abstract pillars of risk, but here we have to expose the messy reality of how we are actively defeating our own defenses. Let's look at the exact metrics. 43% of our exposed enterprise secrets surface completely outside of our source code repositories. They are living in concrete everyday environments like Slack, Teams, and good old SharePoint. That is exactly where the sprawl is actually happening. Think about the simplicity of this attack vector. If an adversary pushes a standard business user and gains access to their corporate Slack account or SharePoint drive, they are simply triggering any of your multi-dollar known signatures or firewalls. They're not. They simply read your chat history. They pick up a plain text API key, and they're using it to authenticate directly into your cloud infrastructure. The machine attacking your enterprise today are not going to DDoS you. They are simply going to just log in. And this perfectly validates why we must shift our defenses to operational tempo. They're not bleeding out because engineers are careless. They are bleeding out because of high-velocity, real-time operational pressures, like a 2 a.m. system outage, where people are scrambling to fix a breaking platform. You cannot secure high-velocity environments with static human-scale tools. You must transition to monitoring the live, ongoing behavior and operational tempo of how these systems and people interact, or we are entirely ceding control to the adversary. So how do we stop an adversary who is simply logging in using our own trusted credentials? How do we recover from this explosion of machine identities? Well, we don't do it manually for sure. We do it with machine speed. A machine speed crisis demands automated machine speed lifecycle. This is a blueprint for taking back absolute control broken into a continuous 4-stage loop. Phase 1 is discovery. You cannot govern what you don't know exists. We must deploy continuous automated scanning across our entire multi-cloud estate, code repositories, and communication channels to index every single key, token, and service account. And phase 2 is posture. Once we catalog the workforce, we map their dependencies. We look at these machines. Who are they talking to? We strip away access permissions, and we flag over privilege drift against defined baselines. We systematically shrink the blast radius. Phase 3 is simply monitoring. Because machine behavior is highly repetitive, a rogue machine call stands out instantly if you know what normal looks like. We establish real-time behavioral baselines so that if a trusted service account suddenly shifts its behavior or alters its operational tempo at 3 a.m., it triggers an immediate automated alert. In phase 4, it's simply remediation. This is where we close the loop. We enforce automated credential rotation, we transition to short-lived dynamic tokens, and we aggressively deprovision stale, orphan keys before an adversary can discover them. So we must stop treating non-human security as a single point-in-time checklist in a living architectural loop designed to match the high-velocity tempo of the modern enterprise. And so the life cycle we just walked through is how our engineering teams are fighting this war under the hood. But a technical solution without executive mandate is dead on arrival. This slide represents the leader's marching orders. If we want to turn the systematic risk into a managed business standard, leadership must enforce 4 strict operational directives. First, you must mandate strict ownership. No key, no token, and no service account should ever exist in a vacuum. We have to implement ironclad metadata tagging policies requiring every single programmatic credential to map back to a designated living business unit or engineering team. If an identity does not have an active named owner, its access is similarly revoked, period. Second, you must automate secret rotation. We have to systematically execute the death of the static, long-lived secret. We must force our development environments to migrate towards short-lived dynamic tokens and leverage automated enterprise vaults to handle rotation seamlessly behind the scenes. This completely removes the human friction and the paralyzing fear of breaking production. Third, you must centralize visibility. Stop allowing individual cloud teams, engineering groups, or DevOps to work in silos to manage credentials in isolated pockets. You must strip away these silos and consolidate your entire machine footprint into a single, unified, non-human identity control plane, giving your security operations center a single pane of glass over the entire automated workforce. And of course, finally, you must integrate this explicitly into your zero trust strategy. It's still a thing. Non-human identity is not a niche background infrastructure project. It is a foundational, non-negotiable pillar of modern security architecture. If your current zero trust roadmap is strictly focused on human endpoints, human multi-factor authentication, and human logins, your entire enterprise strategy is inherently incomplete and structurally exposed. Security is no longer defined by who signs in on the keyboard. It is defined by what the machines are allowed to do when we are not looking. And so this is your macro takeaway. As we close today, I want to leave you with one final undeniable reality. The time to act is right now. Non-human identities are not a future problem. They are the fastest growing, least secured, and most heavily targeted attack surface in the modern enterprise today. The math does not lie, and the math is accelerating. Any organization trying to force legacy human-scale governance frameworks into a machine-speed problem is fundamentally built to fail. Those legacy systems simply cannot scale to meet the crisis. And of course, this isn't just a challenge, it is an unprecedented strategic inflection point. The CISOs, executives, and organizations who recognize this shift today will move first to implement true non-human governance. Will not just secure their own perimeters, you will define the operational standard of the entire hybrid enterprise. So let's step out of the shadows, secure your machine workforce, and build an architecture that actually matches the velocity of the innovation. So thank you very much, and go welcome the machines with guardrails.